Well, we passed, all five of us passed our MSc. And then, of course, we were looking for job. That was a real big change that people used to consider us as teachers of the deaf. This is way back in 1972. Not even the ENTs knew what we could do, what we could not do. Luckily enough, at that time, we had conducted one exhibition way back in 1971. We had conducted one exhibition in the medical college along with the medical exhibition. Through that, we were trying to get more patients. And we had also conducted the first camp in speech and hearing in Davanagere. Of course, I could not attend that. My junior class, that is Dr. Vijayalakshmi and Kumudvalli and others, that batch had attended that. That was the first camp that was conducted. That was the first exhibition that we had. Well, coming back to our own unemployment days, rather, there was no job. If you go and talk to ENTs, they had almost, some one or two ENTs used to say, you will be given a table and chair in a corner and you have to sit. That was the kind of responses. And they used to think that we were teachers of the deaf. That was the condition, actually. Later, it went on like that. And of course, luckily enough, at that time, I really got a job in Bangalore, one Sheila Kotwala School for the Deaf. That was far away from the city, almost near the Den airport. And they had said they would give 300 rupees per month. That was the job that. And I worked there for 3 months. I could not really, manage with 300 rupees. Almost every weekend, I would come back to Mysore and meet my classmates and some old classmates, of course, BSc classmates who were working at the institute. And also Nagaraj and others had joined MSc then. Nagaraj, Basuraj, Vijayalakshmi, that batch had started MSc. By that time, they had increased the number of seats to 10. And of course, Dr. Pratibha had completed her MSc by 1970 itself. So I used to come back and it was difficult for me I used to borrow money from my friends and then go back to Bangalore, spend 1 week and again come back. This was the situation. So then I said, I can't manage with that. Of course, I used to do therapy, hearing aid repair and all that in the school for the deaf. There was no problem. But living was difficult for me there. So I came back to Mysore. Once I came back to Mysore, I didn't have any job. So I used to go to the institute, Aish, whittling the cycle and going there and trying to spend time with my classmates, teachers. One, Mr. Manohar, was there, senior to me. I mean, the first batch, first MSc batch. He was already a lecturer. Dr. Vyasmurthy was lecturer. And there was no job even in the institute or anywhere. So I used to do translation of PEPs, that is public education pamphlets, and write public education pamphlets in Kannada. And they used to give me some money for that, say like 500, 700, like that. So I used to spend time with them. And I was asked then, of course, to be honorary clinical supervisor. That is, no money is given, but still I could work as clinical supervisor for the students because I'd completed my MSc. So I was, and meanwhile, I used to help, people who were doing their dissertations. Of course, I must acknowledge that I was helped by Dr. Mallikarjuna. Of course, he was Mallikarjuna then. Now he is in Ahmedabad. He used to help me a lot during my dissertation days. And he was doing a dissertation on aspirated Ha in Canada. Of course, he was using the spectrograph, that only spectrograph that was available in Mysore, that was in Central Institute of Indian Languages. I mean, there were only two. One was in Indian Institute of Science, and another one was Central Institute of Indian Languages. And of course, Nair Hospital had spectrograph by that time, because I remember Dr. Vaidyanathan used to carry out some experiments using that and make papers. These were the only thing. So I used to help people who were, and based on my dissertation, of course, two of my juniors that were immediate juniors, one Mr. George Samuel and another one, Ms. Shanta, who is in Bangalore now. They have continued the work in the sense George was trying to find out how it is distributed in the remaining population, male population. And Shanta had taken up whether that relationship is true with reference to females and children. She found that in females it was 1:5, not 1:8. So that was she repeated the experiment almost and found that it was 1:5. So, and later on, of course, others also did conduct some experiments based on that. For example, Dr. Jairam, he had worked on the frequency to be tuned in the artificial larynx. So based on optimum frequency, they had changed the fundamental frequency of vibration of the artificial larynx. And one is Geeta Gore. Of course, she was Geeta Pai then. Geeta Gore, who was in Nair. She had worked whether it was coinciding with formant frequencies. She found that it was not coinciding with the formant frequencies. And later, now Dr. H.S. Gopal, who is in Microsoft, he had worked on this and tried to find out how it is. The normal population is not using the optimum. Only a small portion of the subjects are using the optimum frequency. So it is distributed rather normally. It is in the center, around the mean, find the people using the optimum frequency. That was the work. And of course, I used to enjoy along with them. Others were also carrying out their dissertations, other students, and I used to help them. Of course, Mrs. Menon used to ask me to help them because I was very much fond of instruments and we had used the instruments. So that was the thing. And it continued. I continued to work as honorary clinical supervisor for more than almost 1.5 years. That is till 1974 March. In 1974, in the month of March, one lecturer, Mrs. Shamala, who was a lecturer in speech pathology at Aish, had resigned and had left to UK after marriage. So that post became vacant, and all of us, about 25 to 30 of us, had applied for that post. All of us were fighting, my own classmates, my juniors, that is Vijayalakshmi, Kumudvalli, and it was the only post that at that time even I used to tell my other friends, if I don't get this, I would burn all my certificates and dissertation, everything, and start a shop like pawn shop where I can, you know, I was so much frustrated because we were not getting the job. Of course, interestingly, in the meanwhile, there was a letter from Red Cross from Srinagar. They had asked for three people with speech and hearing degree, but they were offering 300 rupees per month. So Dr. Ratna, in fact, had recommended my name, Nagaraja's name, and Baswaraja's name. We said, sorry, we cannot go for that salary, 300 rupees, that place. And that was the story. So we had a tough time till that. Then an interview was held, and luckily enough, I got selected. Of course, my experience as honorary clinical supervisor helped me rather in getting that job. Of course, in the meanwhile, Nagaraj had worked in Mangalore and in some other places, Varanasi, I think. Yeah, he had worked in Mangalore and Varanasi in some speech clinics and all that. But luckily enough, it was in speech pathology. My thesis dissertation was in speech, and I had worked with people doing dissertation in speech. And all this somehow luckily helped me in getting that job. So I joined as a lecturer at All India Institute of Speech and Hearing on 13th March 1974. I joined Aish as a lecturer in 1974. And of course, we were very few, particularly in speech. Dr. Ratna, myself, and Mrs. Menon were the only three people who were working then. And later, of course, it expanded. Dr. Purushottam also joined. And of course, much later, other people also joined. But we had plenty of work to do, and particularly enjoyed teaching. And of course, I learned a lot of things from my own student. Luckily enough, I had opportunity to be the clinic in charge. Maybe because I had experience as clinical supervisor, they asked me to be the in charge of clinic. So we brought some changes in the clinical activities too. Of course, Aish was the first training center, and we didn't had any model. Of course, then they had introduced that there will be theory classes in the morning and the cases will be seen in the afternoon. That was the situation. Of course, in the morning time, the clinical supervisors, I had told you, those who had training in B.Ed, psychology and other things were appointed as clinical supervisors. They used to look after the clinical work. So later, we thought maybe we should extend. And also, there was too much of rush in the afternoons. All the students would be in the clinic. That was the situation. Of course, we were not posting them outside the institute also. At that time, we introduced that those who are having clinical work in the morning will have theory in the afternoon, and those who have theory in the afternoon, morning, would have clinical work in the afternoon. That worked out very well. In fact, that was the first change, in fact, we brought, and we could see more cases and use the space more judiciously, and even the work-wise, it was distributed better. That was one of the things that we still I remember having introduced at the clinical level. And of course, we were not happy with the way in which we were writing the lesson plans and all that. Even then, we used to, it was a learning phase, good learning phase rather. We learned a lot and we tried to introduce those things in the clinical situation. As lecturer, of course, I got interested in 1976 or 7, 77 probably. Even I used to get the specimen from medical college, paying some money to attenders. And my friend was was doing his house surgeoncy at Mysore Medical College. We used to get together and dissect the brain and show the parts to our students. That was the way in which we used to teach. And of course, my interest in voice continued. I started continuing to conduct some experiments related to optimum frequency. For example, I had carried out experiments. What will be the mean airflow rate at optimum compared to other frequencies? I found that it was the minimum at optimum frequency compared to others. Then maximum phonation duration at optimum frequency compared to other higher frequency and lower frequency. Again, it was maximum at optimum frequency. So our assumption that, or we tried to say that at optimum frequency, there is maximum physioacoustic economy. And so therefore it can be used. And we used to use it regularly in the clinic. And of course, I kept teaching and I started guiding dissertations. My first candidate was one is Premlata and Jairam. Those two, they had worked on, one had worked on frequency discrimination in singers, and then the other one had worked on the, measurement of different parameters in voice disorders and voice, that is like vital capacity, fundamental frequency, optimum frequency, frequency range, MPT, and all vital mean airflow rate and all. We used to measure the mean airflow rate using an spirograph. That was again by our experiment. I mean, just asking the subject to say as continuously as possible and finding out how much air has been collected over the period of time and dividing that volume by the duration. That we used to consider as the mean airflow rate. So my interest in using the equipment continued. But at that time, all the equipment used to be in the Department of Electronics. I mean, every time we need tape recorder, we have to go to electronics department and request them to issue it and bring it. That irritated me in the sense, why we should not have all these things and so that we can easily handle it. So I started pestering Dr. Ratna that we would like to have it. We would like to establish a speech lab. So I started a speech lab at All India Institute of Speech and Hearing way back in 1976-77, where we just collected tape recorders, beat frequency oscillator, audio frequency analyzer, and we had one speech emphasis indicator, which could show only the intensity. We started gradually collecting the instruments from electronics and also started buying few equipment from outside. And then I think we got the spectrograph from voice identification, quite huge, way back in 1980, 80. That is where even Ravi Shankar, who was at AYGNH, and many others. I mean, even one Indira Nandyal, who is in States, for example, she analyzed infant cry, and she did carry out dissertation on that, and many studies on distinctive features in Indian languages were carried out during that period using this spectrograph. And at the same time, we got what is known as a pitch analyzer, which I was very much fond of. We were using that and for measurement, and we used to measure the variations in frequency and intensity by moving the cursor and noting it down. So that started again fueling my interest in voice. So I selected a topic for my PhD under Dr. Ratna as differential diagnosis of dysphonias. I thought of measuring the various aerodynamic parameters like vital capacity, mean airflow rate, and the phonation quotient, and one more. And similarly, the fundamental frequency, maximum, minimum, and then that is for range and optimum, and then fluctuations in fundamental frequency, fluctuations in intensity, all these in different kinds of voice disorders. Meanwhile, it so happened, I started working, and we were asked by the ministry to prepare a plan for 15 years, what we want to do for the next 15 years. So we prepared a very big plan. We thought of starting a separate department for speech science, language science, so that we could expand. So it so happened by that time the speech lab had grown. So in 1984, we started what is known as Speech Science, Department of Speech Science. We did that, and we got a separate department on 11th May 1984. Still, I remember the date, in fact. So we collected, accumulated everything. In the meanwhile, the Chief Minister of Karnataka, Ramakrishna Hegde, was the Chief Minister of Karnataka. He had toured the state for election campaigning and all that. He had developed a voice problem. So somebody had referred him to the institute, and I was asked to examine him. So I measured and carried out, took case history and carried out the analysis and all that, and said, look, it is the case of early nodule that is found. And then he said, okay, and he went away, and he went to Boston, USA, to get himself tested by ENT. Okay, I think he got tested by Sataloff or somebody. Yeah, some big name rather. He got tested, and they also said yes. We had advised voice therapy. So in Boston also they said yes, it is early vocal nodules, and you must undergo voice therapy. So then he came back to the institute and said, yes, you can do therapy. Of course, at that time, he went to Kodaikanal for rest for 15 days. And they asked me to accompany him, and I carried the pitch analyzer, which I was using for therapy purposes and also for research purposes. And of course, I did therapy for him for 15 days at Kodaikanal. Okay. And of course, at the time, there was somebody from Chennai also, Madras, then MGR at that time had aphasia, and one Mr. Rajanand was treating him. He was my old student, Mr. Rajanand. Now he's in Boston. Of course, those people also had asked us to see MGR, and of course, Mr. Manoharan started treating him and all that. At that I didn't go there. In the meanwhile, it was probably we were the first people to use electroglottograph to measure
Wow.
the movement of the vocal folds indirectly. Of course, that we cannot measure it directly. And of course, how to record the durations was a big problem because we were getting the output, we don't know where to go, feed that and what. Then we had one high frequency analyzer. By that time, some of students who were working for their dissertations had used that. We could measure the duration in terms of milliseconds.
Okay.
I managed to connect it to high frequency analyzer and started looking at the waveform. Yeah, that was used again for another 5 to 10 dissertations on all the sorts of cases, including the electroglottograph on glottograph in hearing impaired and voice disorders, normal, different age groups, and all that. That was the story. And in 1984, a very interesting thing happened. We were supposed to buy one pitch analyzer. What we had proposed for the money was very less to purchase a pitch analyzer. So I was thinking what to do about it. Just then, they had introduced computers. Then, Dr. Anant Padmanabha, who was working with Gunnar Pant, had just visited Bangalore. He was in Bangalore after his this one at Switzerland. And I came to know that he has done something on that measurement of that. So I contacted him. He said, yes, he has developed some software to do that. So we bought a computer, Wipro computer with 180 inches or something, a big printer, dot matrix printer. The RAM was 128 KB.
Okay.
Hard disk was 20 or something like that.
Okay.
The monitor was RGB at that time. And all that costed us 1,25,000.
Wow.
It was the first computer to be used in speech and hearing rather. Then I invited Dr. Anant Padmanabha. He came and said, okay, he has developed some program which can be used to measure the fundamental frequency and intensity. So he used that, and we got fascinated by that, and we started working. Started working with Anant Padmanabha day and night.
Okay.
And we started giving him ideas, what things we want. And of course, Mr. Venkatesh was also there at that time. Now Dr. Venkatesh, he was also there in speech science. Dr. Savitri was in speech science. We were giving him the ideas, what we want, and we started spending time. This was in 1985. Started working different measurements and all that. And even what I used to do on the manually using pitch analyzer, put it into that. And even about articulation therapy, articulation testing, and even for measurement of stuttering. So we started working on developing WOGME. Way back in 1985, we developed WOGME along Dr. Anant Padmanabha. He worked on that, but we started giving him ideas and testing all that in our lab, in the speech science lab. So that is how the first computer was introduced. Of course, later, Dr. Savitri also got another computer under another project from DST.
Mhm.
So we started, I mean, at that time, even we conducted one workshop, clinical applications of uh, personal computers in speech and hearing. So we were so much fascinated and got thrilled by that program and started showing it to everyone that these things can be done.
Mhm.
So we started spreading the word to others. And of course, at that time, he could give it to some other people by 1990. And of course, I completed my PhD way back in 1987. That Harry Holian was an examiner. And of course, he did appreciate what we had done, but of course, at the same time, I had included all sorts of things in the sense, all sorts of analysis was done. Now, at that time, that Ratna was in AYGNH, 85, 84 to 87. And no, even, yeah. And of course, he was my guide. So I had to go to Bombay and stay with him and work there. But we had difficulty in getting the statistics undone, statistical analysis. We thought of administering the discriminant analysis for finding out the parameters which are useful. So we approached Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, and they directed us to the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. There, one Dr. Hebsur was there, and he helped us in doing that. Of course, at that time, it was punching the data and then analyzing it. And I had to spend about 1,500 rupees to get that data analyzed. Uh, uh, and we got that discriminant analysis. And while doing discriminant analysis, they also did factor analysis. I had added all that, and Harry Holian had stated, I mean, you should have restricted yourself to the hypothesis that you had suggested, and there was no need for adding factor analysis and all that. And I agreed with him later, of course. We were so enthusiastic that we had data, so we had put everything. So that was it, actually. And of course, I got my doctorate in 1987. That was the, and of course, by that time, lot of students had worked under my supervision, dissertations, in a span of 25 years of my stay at Aish, had guided 125 dissertations. And of course, I think I was quite popular
Yes.
in the sense, in 1 year, 1993 or so, out of 22 students, MSc students, 21 students had worked under my guidance. And of course, other people in the institute got angry and they fought and said, we must introduce independent project in audiology.
Okay.
Later on, of course, they also restricted the number of dissertations, and each person has only 5.
Okay.
And of course, I was training in charge for some time. That gave me a good opportunity to learn about the process of examination, like scrutinizing, tabulating, and getting in touch with the university authorities, and forming the syllabus and so many other things. In that way, I really enjoyed. At the same time, I had an opportunity to go to England. I got one Columbia fellowship. In fact, I visited City University, London, and there was a small department. There were 2 professors in speech in that university who helped me a lot in getting adjusted to England. I went in sometime in November. That was a very bad period according to them. And I got uh, I started finding it very difficult to get adjusted myself. So I stayed only for 3 months, but it gave me a good experience, in fact, and it gave me opportunity to tell them rather that we were doing much better than them. In fact, even at that time, by that time we had started, we had worked on infant cranialysis and distinctive features and so many other things. They were surprised to hear me that we knew all those things, and of course, if I had stayed back and tried to learn some of the things, I didn't have much work there. That was what I felt, even though they were trying to post me some other places to learn, and I was finding it difficult, and I came back halfway. Of course, we had opportunities even to take the students to camps in various places. At least I had attended more than 25 to 30 camps. They were very useful. Of course, it gave opportunity to mingle with students and enjoy and all that. That was very good experience. I mean, sometimes we used to go for weeks together. Start in one place and then move on to the other place like that. We used to move around and meet or even see hundreds and thousands of cases. In some places, still I remember, we used to work late in the night till 9:30, or even more than that sometimes. That used to be very interesting, and of course, it was a good opportunity for even students to learn about the problems of the rural population, particularly. Even now, I still believe that the camps are very, very important for training programs. Unfortunately, most of the institutions have stopped doing this. That has several implications, but unfortunately, they have not realized that, I should say. Now, of course, we would like to stay in ivory tower, and really frustrating to say that started acting like the medical people, Okay, anyhow. And of course, I had opportunity to head the department of speech pathology also for some time when Dr. Ratna became director. And in fact, I was the only staff in that teaching staff in the department of speech pathology at that time. Dr. Purushottam, who was there, had gone on fellowship, and Dr. Ratna had become the director, and Mrs. Menon had retired. I think we managed almost one academic year with that kind of thing. Of course, we used to make use of clinical supervisors, research assistants, and others to teach the courses. So in that way, I never specialized in any specific area, even though my interest was basically in voice. I used to teach aphasia also, and organization of speech and hearing centers. All those things, of course, helped me to build my own career rather. Of course, I realized it only later. In the meanwhile, of course, I was guiding a PhD also. Of course, Dr. Shekhar was my first candidate to do PhD way back in 1990. Of course, analyzed the TEP speech, laryngeal speech, and esophageal speech using the WOGMI, and again the fluctuations and all that. That was it. That was my first PhD candidate. He was working very hard. I mean, of course, he used to come and say, I've written this, sir, just see. I mean, of course, he used to be lazy, and of course, I learned a lot from Dr. Rajshekhar also, and from many of my students. I should say I learned a lot, because they used to come with a lot of new ideas, problems. So that made us to work hard and find out the solutions. In that way, I was very much satisfied with my work at Aish. I became professor in 1989. That was quite satisfying. Later on, of course, I had some personal problem, and I thought it may not be right to continue in the institute. So in 1999, September, I submitted my resignation, that is voluntary retirement. By that time, I had an offer from Jordan, Applied Sciences University, Amman. So I went there as professor, thinking that I could get some good money and also some work. But unfortunately, there was no work, but I was getting good money. So that was it. There, people were not, the students were not interested in their studies at all. They used to openly say, come here for the degree so that it would help me in my matrimonial gains, rather. That was the feeling. Of course, with difficulty, of course, my family was in Mysore itself. I worked for 2 years there and then came back to Mysore. Before coming, of course, I used to think about, because I knew what was going on in Aish. A lot of students used to apply. They never used to get the seat. Even within Karnataka, several people used to apply. And people from outside the country also used to apply. They never used to get the seats. So then I was thinking that I should think of some other model of the institution. So it occurred to me, it so happened, one of my friend, of course, I should say, one Mr. Mahananda, he was working in JCE, that is Jayachamrajendra College of Engineering, and also my own classmate, Professor Sangmeshwar, who was working as professor of computer science. Of course, he had helped me a lot in conducting the computer workshops and also in getting my thesis typed and all that. So those two encouraged me. And of course, there was one Dr. Guruswamy, an ENT specialist from JSS Hospital, also had encouraged me to start a center at JSS. Once I came back from Jordan, I was thinking of the speech and hearing center in an institution like JSS, because it has medical college, engineering college, polytechnic for physically handicapped, and dental college, all these things. And of course, I was familiar with the engineering college also. So I prepared a proposal and submitted to His Holiness Swamiji, Sri Deshikendra Swamiji. He is the chief of Suttur Math. JSS refers to Jagadguru Sri Shivratreshwar Math. So Swamiji was kind enough to look at my proposal, and probably it coincided with the vision of Swamiji, and he granted permission to start this JSS Institute of Speech and Hearing. He personally, in fact, took a lot of interest in establishing this institute. And even now, of course, he shows a lot of interest in our activities and keeps encouraging us. They said you can start it, but they wanted me to start that as a part of the medical college or department in the medical college. I said, no, sorry, that won't work. an independent institute so that it can grow to the full extent. And I told them, look, it is not just interaction with the medical people. It needs to be, it needs interaction with several other professionals. Therefore, it is necessary to have it as an independent institution. Because it is true. Now, for example, we keep the medical people outside JSS are hesitant to send patients to our institution because they feel that the patients may be referred to the doctors within the hospital. Of course, I keep telling them, no, we are not going to do that. You please send so that we can send the cases back after evaluation. So that was the situation. And my dream, rather, my vision was that to develop that as a full-fledged institution that is starting from bachelor's to doctorate. So in 2001, we started with the bachelor's program. Of course, in the first batch, we had only 5 students because many of them were not aware of it. So, but next year, immediately, all the seats, 33 seats were filled. And of course, our management was happy that it is going to work because they were hesitant till that time whether it is going to work or not, specifically because there is Aish. People would go there rather than coming here. But I knew that there were so many people who could not get into Aish would be coming to us. That was the idea. And of course, at that time, some of my old colleagues also helped me to give publicity about JSS institution, and my own old students. Many of them had sent their daughters and sons to our institute. I had contacted all of them and gave good publicity, and we could get it. So it started with that, and then the program was conducted for 4 years. Of course, there was a lot of opposition from Aish itself. Let me be frank with you, because then director, of course, was not interested in seeing that this institution also grows. So he tried, but JSS is more powerful, of course, and it could manage to overcome all those problems, and we could continue to do that. And then in 2006, we got a postgraduate program, MASLP, not MSc, even though University of Mysore was conducting MSc Audiology, MSc Speech Language Pathology at Aish. I opted for MASLP because I strongly believe, even now, that MASLP is more required for our country than just specialization. One, because this gives training in both speech language pathology and audiology to the students. Now, in India, we have 2 government institutions, and the creation of posts in these 2 places are very limited. So any private institution will be hesitant to appoint 2 people, paying 2 people, that is audiologists separately and speech language pathologists separately. And therefore it becomes difficult to find jobs, and the field will not be able to grow. So that is my argument, rather, for MASLP. And apart from that, I strongly believe that specialization, of course, yes, specialization is required, but where or which aspect we are going to specialize, even within audiology or even within speech language pathology, there are so many areas which require specialization. Each of them needs to be specialized. You cannot specialize speech language pathology as a whole. You cannot specialize audiology as a whole. even within audiology, for example, you need to specialize either in cochlear implants or in testing the implants or in noise control or even in speech, either aphasia or voice or other neurogenic disorders or child language developmental disorders. I mean, it is not really practical, according to me, to say that we are going to specialize within 2 years. Yes, give opportunity for people to specialize, say, after your master's degree. Let them specialize in whatever that they want. I mean, before that, you try to give enough material to them to decide what they want to be. So that is my argument. In fact, I use this argument even with RCI to say that MASLP is required for our country. We are not yet mature. And specialization can occur only after master's degree in my, according to me. The people will get matured only after their master's degree, I believe. Otherwise, till that time, calling it a specialization may not be of much use. That is my argument, rather. I mean, I know there is opposition for this, but even then, I believe that. So, therefore, I started MASLP and defended that. And of course, later in 2010, we started doctoral program also. Of course, I was the only recognized guide by the University of Mysore to guide PhD in speech and hearing again. It is not either speech pathology or audiology. It is in speech and hearing. This is different from what the award at AISH through University of Mysore. Of course, there are only 2 institutions under University of Mysore, that is AISH and of course JSS. So we started that, and of course some students joined, and of course till now I have guided about 5 PhDs, and 5 of them, 4 have been awarded and 1 is awaited. And of course, I was the only person who had some training or the qualification to or meeting the requirements of the university to guide master's degree students by that time. So I started guiding them, and again another nearly 200 students from JSS have been guided. So apart from that, of course, luckily enough, or as a part of my philosophy, the other institutions from Kerala also keep asking me to help the students or guiding the students, their master's degree students, doing their dissertations. So totally till now, I have guided nearly 350 students. In fact, maybe it is a record, I don't know, I'm not sure. But then I feel proud. I mean, I believe particularly why I started helping them is that I know the infrastructures are not good in those institutions, but the output is going to be affected. Somehow or the other, they will manage to get the degree. But at least if we can give some input and try to improve their conditions, the speech and hearing in India will be better. That is what I strongly believe. Even I used to go to some of the Kerala institutions as a guest lecturer and teach them some of the courses. And later, of course, last year, just in 2019, our management insisted that we should have masters in speech language pathology and masters in audiology also. Of course, from the point of view of financial benefits that we're going to get. They asked me to start this, and we have started that also. I'm very grateful to His Holiness Swamiji Sri Deshikendra Swamiji. So because of his blessings, we have been able to grow and also start another center at Dharwad. Of course, he's behind all these things, and because of his blessings, we keep doing all these things. Of course, our management kept asking me to introduce some other courses and all that to expand the institution at Mysore. But I said, look, there is no sense. There is already a national institution. I mean, we are not willing to compete with them. We cannot compete with them, either in terms of money or in terms of price, because that institution has been built by us for the past 40 years already, and it has its own status now. I mean, we are not in a position to compete with them, or we don't want to compete with them. Instead of that, we should go to places where there are no institutions at all, or where people require our help. So that was started in 2015. And of course, there the intake is about 25 for bachelor's degree, and we are trying to increase it to 40 now, because there is a lot of demand. A lot of people from that area are coming and getting trained, and I hope they will start working in those areas and try to provide. My involvement in Isha, of course, because our people were only few. They were having classes in their hands, and then they will say, toast to you. Because we were not used to that at all, that kind of a culture. Dr. Kameshwaram contested for presidentship. I mean, uphold the dignity of the profession.